Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Hello.
And we are joined by my friend Elaina.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to discuss Shakespeare Sonnet number 8. Before I get to that, couple of things. First thing, I also am part of an online book discussion group, which is Dissident Reads, and we are actually about to start working our way through. We're about to start reading together and discussing C.S. Lewis's book, That Hideous Strength. So, if that is interesting, if that sounds interesting to you, then feel free to. I'll put a link in the show description. You can join us there. Also, I am as usual. If you like my work, if you want to support, support what I do, you can support me at subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great. Also, link in the show description. And having said that, Elaina has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight. So let me get that up on the screen. And once you see that, we can start reading.
Okay. Sonnet 8. Music to hear. Why hearest thou music sadly? Sweets with sweets war not. Joy delights in joy. Why lovest thou that which thou receivest not gladly, or else receivest with pleasure thine annoy? If the true concord of well-tuned sounds, by unions married, do offend thine ear, they do but sweetly chide thee, who confounds in singleness the parts that thou shouldest bear. Mark how one string, sweet husband to another, strikes each in each by mutual ordering, resembling sire and child and happy mother, who all in one pleasing note do sing, whose speechless song being many, seeming one, sings this to thee, thou single wilt prove none.
Okay. So, thank you, Elaina. And Nate, would you like to get us started on this one tonight?
Yep. I enjoy very much poems that that tell you quit being a little emo turd. Yeah. Why are you being all sad? Why are you trying to be alone? Go join in with something, become part of something. It actually kind of strikes back to something I mentioned in our last discussion, which was this whole idea that you're not going to find your satisfaction by yourself, probably. You are much better off trying to have a family, trying to join yourself to something more. And this poem, to me, seems to say that. It's just, especially sort of the second half. And so I kind of enjoyed it.
So I have to admit, this is not my favorite of the Shakespeare sonnets so far. In fact, if you go back and look at my previous recordings, I've been going through them one by one, for the most part, and I did numbers 1 through 7, and then I got to this one, and I'm like, you know what? I remember another one much later in the series that I kind of liked. Maybe I'll do that one this time. And then I came back to this one because I don't know. It doesn't. Well, okay. There's two reasons for that. Number one, the first 14 or 15 are what are called the procreation sonnets, and so they're all saying a variation of the same thing, which it's a good message. I'm all on board with the idea, but at the same time, it gets kind of repetitive to just follow them one after another. And also, this one just did not strike me quite the same way. Several of the others did. Just something about the metaphor, something about the way he lays it out. It just didn't. I've liked. I think I've liked numbers 1 through 7. I've liked most of those a bit better than this one so far. Although I don't know, maybe you guys can persuade me otherwise and talk me out of that opinion. I don't know.
One of the other sonnets was the first thing I joined in on discussing.
That sounds. Wait.
Maybe.
There what or was it was there a Shakespeare, was it one of the give me a second. There was one, was it
No,
from Julius Caesar?
No.
No,
It was
that was not
definitely
the
one
first
of the
one.
creation sonnets, because it was like the whole thrust of this is, damn, you cute, have babies. I was like, all right.
It's that still comes up a good bit. Although it's let's see, there is one where it's like, your mom looks at you and she sees when she was, young and beautiful, and if you have kids, you're gonna get to do the same thing. And it is I actually just found a picture of me from when I was in like 8th grade or something today, that I hadn't seen in a long time, and it's like, wow, I really do look like my older son. And there was also one which I don't know if I'd ever seen of my mom when she was a child, and I put like the two of them next to each other. I'm like, there is a lot more continuity here than I was aware of. And it's a strange thing.
Genetics are a thing. Wow.
What's that?
Like, wow, dang, genetics are a thing.
Okay. As usual for this, we get off topic pretty quickly. But that's actually one thing. It's kind of funny watching a lot of TV shows or movies, and like you have a father and a son, and like they're just two people, which I'm like, there's no I don't really think about this too much, because obviously, in addition to all the other things you have to look for when you're casting, like trying to find people who look like family would be a lot more work. But I remember, what was it, the TV show Heroes, where like there were a few times where like they had characters, they had they had families, and I'm like, that they actually look like they're related. That actually looks like the mother and the daughter. And it was like, it's kind of nice to see that when someone actually pays attention to it. Anyway, but Elaina, did you have more you wanted to say on this one just yet?
Well, I guess I was really most struck by the first line, music to hear, why hearest thou music sadly? And it just kind of made me think of the different kind of ways we experience music, and this poem sort of equates, on one hand, it equates music with joy, right? But obviously it's not how this person's experiencing it, and it brings us into that emo element that Nate was mentioning, that we do, I don't know, maybe like to revel in our misery at times. It kind of has its own weird joy to it. So it made me think about that.
Well, there's also what is it? There's also something which I kind of don't think an idea which I don't think would be quite as well received today, which is the idea that like there is a proper emotional reaction to this or that, and it's like you hear this music, and what this music should create in you, the reaction you should have is this. And if you don't have that reaction, something's gone wrong. Whereas, today it's like, well, whatever you feel, however you feel at any given moment, well, that's just, how it is, how you are, and anyone who criticizes you is just being a meanie face. And so it's kind of it is kind of interesting. Like, you have let me see, where is it? Why lovest thou that which thou receivest not gladly, or else receivest with pleasure thine annoy? Like, why are you attracted to, or why do you not enjoy this thing which should produce, which should make you happy, and why are these things that are not good for you, why are you taking part, why are you enjoying these things that are not good for you, why are you enjoying these things that are possibly even harming you? And it's, again, it's not a, I don't think that'd be a particularly popular message in a lot of our culture today.
No, today you wallow in your victimhood, and you wear that, that's your flag and anthem. You're like, I've been hurt. Yeah. So it's my 6-year-old. You know what I told him? Okay, you've cried enough. Let's go. And I'm gonna tell you the same thing. But it is a bit of human nature that we do kind of tend to want to be like, look at the bad thing that happened. Everyone loved me. Because it's an easy way to get sympathy and a little bit of tatang that can otherwise be hard to come by. There's nothing wrong with it in, little bitty doses, just drops. But some people want to drink it by the bucket, and it's like, no. Now Shakespeare's talking to you.
Well, one other thing another thing in this one is the idea that, like, there's single notes, and then you put them together and you have a chord, and it's something entirely different, and it's something, it's, to use the well-worn phrase, greater than the sum of its parts. And, like, I took a music theory class in college, and I've heard people analyzing things like this a few times, and, like, just a single note, doesn't in itself, like, say that much. But when you put 3 notes together in a chord, like, just a single chord, those 3 notes at the same time, I mean the right ones, that those can create an emotional reaction just with those 3 notes. There's major chords and minor chords, and the harmony of those notes, or, like, to take the other end of the metaphor, what he's comparing it to, the harmony of a family, a husband, a wife, and a child or children, it creates a lot more for the world than just an isolated individual. And it's, hey, here's another reason to go, make kids and be part of the continuing of your civilization.
That, and when I first read it, that kind of struck a false note for me, because I thought, well, not everybody's gonna have a family. That's not everyone's calling. But I thought it was a really beautiful metaphor for just, the nuclear family, but also just human relationships and connectedness generally. Even if you're not a part of a family, you're part of a human family, right? And we're not isolated. We need each other, everybody at some level. So I thought it was really nice.
So there's, okay, so 2 things with what you said. For one thing, like, at least in the way this is presented, I don't know if there was a real person he was talking to, but in the way this is presented, this isn't just general advice to humanity. He's talking to a particular person.
But that's just kind of how I processed it eventually. I thought, I can see another layer to this.
Yeah, but and the other thing is like, okay, like there are people who are called to something else, and I'm Catholic now, and okay, there's priests, and the way things are, the way we
I
have
think
things
some
set
of
up right
them
now.
should be getting married too.
What's that?
I think some of them should be getting married too, but that's a whole different conversation.
But like there are people who for this reason or that are not going to be a part of that, and that's not
Right.
but for most of us, for most people, like that should be a normal part of life. And like if at a certain point, if enough people start declining that, we start to have real problems. um you know if you I actually made and at a few different levels, one of which, and I made a video on this topic. um you know if you don't have kids, like when I had my when I first had my my oldest son, um like the minute I held him in my arms, all of a sudden my horizon for like looking out at the future and what's going to happen and things I have to worry about went forward another like 20 or 30 years. Like my concern for like before that, like day after I die, whatever happens to the world is not my problem. But if you have kids, you've got to worry, you automatically, well, okay, unless you're a complete scumbag, you automatically start worrying about what's happening to them after you die, and it changes how you see the world quite a bit. Um, and I think just in that respect, like giving people a longer timeline, giving people more concern for the future of our world, is kind of important. Um, and you know, also, the future belongs to the people who show up for it. You know.
Well, yeah, but I can see so I can see what she was saying though with the whole, even if you're not going to have a family, if that's not something for you, then I still understand the whole unity of purpose and unity with other people, even if you're not, biological family, if you're not kin. Because honestly, even before you're married, even before you have kids, you need that, those little enclaves of unity, because otherwise you're going to be miserable and you're not going to develop into the person who can have a family. Like I said, it's a developmental process. You have the you have this harmony with your friends. You have these harmony with your the family from which you sprang. I guess brothers and sisters, those kind of things. And as you move on, you can have unity with a profession. My professional brotherhood here, although that tends to be a little bit less that can be a little bit less uplifting sometimes. But like I said, service organizations, your church, whatever. As long as you have something outside of yourself that you can, add yourself to, then you can become part of this human harmony. Honestly, one of my favorite examples of this in sort of fiction is actually in, and I hate saying this title because it's just the most French tasting thing in the world, but Les Miserables. Bleh. Les Miserables.
Love it.
The red and black song where they're all getting together and the young revolutionaries are all meeting, but the one kid has just seen Eponine, I think is her name. He just saw her and it just love at first sight. He's smitten to death. Doesn't know what's going on, and everybody's Marius, and everybody's making kind of all his buddies are in there. They're getting ready to like fight to the death for the future of France, and the people. And he's over there like, man, but she was cute.
Mm-hmm.
Making me rethink my whole life kind of pretty. And they're all kind of giving him some grief, like, oh, you never look at girl. It's like, you've never been the kind of guy to be like, whoa, look at her. And now you're all like, just, like I said, they're kind of giving him this gentle ribbing. But in the end, their leader kind of comes back and drags them all back on task. And it ends with this beautiful moment of harmony where they're all like, yes, the thing that is more important than all of us. And I just love it. It's in my YouTube playlist.
Mm-hmm.
What's yeah, and it's that also, like I said, this is part of the procreation sonnets, and he has references to family, but like that also fits in with that final couplet, thou single wilt prove none. Like, you need to be part of something bigger than you. You need to be joined. You need to be joined to a family, and so by yourself without taking part of that, you won't be very effective. You won't create anything lasting. And so yeah. Let's see.
Said it, even though it's a little confusing if you don't sit and think about it. But he said, if the kernel of wheat abide, it abideth alone. But if it falls to the ground and die, it bring forth much fruit. And it kind of points to the fact that you can be by yourself, all isolated and perfect. You can set things up just how you like them. But you're only ever going to be one. But if you put in the sacrifice and you go down and let yourself be transformed, you can grow back much, much better. It ain't easy. It's not comfortable, but it changes you and makes you better. And honestly, I talk throughout all of these discussions. If you go back and watch them, I will find a point where I talk about things that make you better, because I believe in doing those things because we all need to get better. We're not perfect.
Well, I mean, you're not. I'm.
Sean, I've seen your hair in person.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but it's just, what's that? There's always room for improvement, and so you have to be willing to risk the wrong, and you have to be willing to risk the discomfort and all of these things, but you become better. And it's the same as this. Joining yourself to a cause or people or a family or all of that, it means leaving behind who you were, because you have to sort of break that open before you can really attach to something. And so, like I said, this makes it sound like it's the most simple and easy thing in the world, but it can be tough. It really can.
So wait, you're saying something worth doing that makes us better can be difficult?
Revolutionary thoughts, I know. Come down to my shop, we'll drink wine and swing muskets around, and then we can talk about it.
But what was another thing I found kind of interesting in here, and this goes back a little bit to what I said earlier. The second stanza, if the true concord of well-tuned sounds by unions married do offend thine ear, they do but sweetly chide thee. And it's like, look, and in the metaphor he's talking about music, but he is also talking about, if you see this, and if you see a happy family, and it strikes kind of discordant feelings in you, then it's just telling you you need to change. You need to maybe you need to do something about this, that to take part in this yourself. And these feelings of frustration, or these feelings of envy, or anger, this is a sign, by the way, here's something maybe you should be working on. And again, like not kind of like what you were saying, it's not, there's a sense in which we can take those kind of feelings and turn them into anger and lash out, and there's also a sense in which we can take those kind of feelings and say, okay, what do I need to do to get to this myself? Elaina, how about any thoughts on any of this right now?
I guess I was just thinking about the not so much on like your last point, but the earlier, like the isolation and how that's not good for us, and how I've experienced that lately with these pandemic times, right? Like life has changed so much. I've gone from doing court in a courtroom to doing court on a telephone in my office, and it's just such a different experience. Like it's easier, but there's just a disconnect now with the way things are. That's unfortunate. Like so I was just, also I went to Walmart yesterday. Like I hadn't been into like a big store, like a crowded place, and it was strange. Like, why does it feel so strange to be in Walmart? It's just I don't think it's a positive thing. To get that isolated.
It probably also has to do with the fact that like at least half of the people have like their face covered up, which is
so less than you would think.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I honestly think it's well past time to get rid of these things entirely. I'm not sure if they ever did any good, but I think if they did, we're past that. But
if they're not doing any good now, they never did any.
But anyway,
I would say, because thinking about, sort of our pandemic isolation and how, it's kind of been, it reduced sort of our human symphony, to carry on the metaphor. It reduced our human symphony into sort of like a series of solos. And the thing is that being solo, you tend to focus on the missed notes. Like, I remember one time I was in band for a total of 1 year. I have been a musician for 1 year ever, when I was in 7th grade.
What instrument?
And trombone. Because I'm used to having big things stick out of my face, so I figured that'll work too. But so I played trombone, and it was me and another dude were the 8th grade trombone players, and they had 2 7th graders too. Or no, as an 8th grade. All right, then we had 2 trombone players from the 7th graders, and we were at the sort of band festival, like contest, and we get to a point where we're doing the sight reading music, and there is a trombone solo in here, and the other 3 of us abandoned the other other 8th grade trombone player, left him to do it on his own.
Poor kid.
And he carried it like a champ, but the whole time he's sitting there like sliding that trombone. He's looking over at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ooh." I'm just kind of sliding my slide back and forth like, I ain't doing that. I ain't jumping out here and screwing this up. But and so if he'd have messed anything up, everybody would have been like, "That guy screwed it." And so we tend to put that level of scrutiny on ourselves when we're by ourselves. At least we have a healthy mind. We don't think, "I'm perps, I got nothing to change." But so it's really causing a mental health problem, all these people being apart right now, because you do tend to just get in there and dissect every little mistake ever and be like, "Oh God, I'm terrible, I'm a mess." But when you're harmonizing, some of those little wibble wobbles kind of get washed out and brought into the aggregate, and it's okay. You realize it adds a measure of grace to be a part of these things. And so what this whole pandemic has, I'm hoping, forced people to confront their problems and, improve. I'm hoping that there are going to be a fair number of people coming out the other side of this stronger and better people. I feel like there's going to be plenty of them coming outside more self-obsessed. I ran out of selection of adjectives that was crowd-friendly right there. I immediately went to the armor-piercing adjectives for a minute. It was like, nope, back up. Don't need that power behind it. But just so I'm hoping that all these people having to do all this self-reflection and isolation will come out better and they'll arrive at good conclusions. But then there's also TikTok.
Well, what was to relate this whole theme to the Bible, one of the very first things God said about us in the Bible, it's not good for a man to be alone.
Yeah.
And in that context, again, he was talking more directly about family, wife, and children. But even in the broader context, we weren't made to operate as single units cut off from society, and we and that's not how we'll become what God made us to be. And also, even not just to take it in a slightly different context, as Christians, we also aren't supposed to operate as well, I'm a Christian and I have my Bible, and I'm off here by myself doing my thing. It's like, that's not really what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be part of a body of believers. You're supposed to be, with other Christians. You're supposed to be, you're supposed to be, getting together on a regular basis, talking about these things, and, plugged into a system that can, for instance, say, hey, you're going off track here. Let's pull you back in line.
Buddy, that's a little heresy, and it's looking like it's trying to grow. Maybe stop that.
Well, and not even necessarily heresy, but also just that this is starting to look kind of like a sin here. This is starting to look kind of like something that's gonna drag you down, and possibly, if you're not careful, all the way down. Maybe we can help you get that straightened out. And that's another case of being part of a greater harmony.
And we all have a different role in it, right? Like, we all have a little bit different sound, or the body all has different parts to it working together. So all of it is needed, but in different capacities, I guess.
Yeah, and that's and that's in the the third stanza here. Mark how one string, sweet husbands to another, strikes each and each by mutual ordering, and it's not three strings all playing the same note. That wouldn't create harmony. That wouldn't create anything bigger than itself. It would just be a little louder. But when you have and it is really interesting seeing how these things add up together when you look at when you're learning. Like, I have what I call a poser guitar, because I have a guitar, and every few years I'll pick it up and start working on it and learning to play it, but then something will distract me and I'll put it down again. I'm probably due to start trying again pretty soon. But when you're learning guitar or piano, that would be another one. You see how how it's not just one note at a time. It's these several notes together start to create something again much bigger. It starts to create something much more powerful than just one note at a time. And it's because they're different, and it's because of the way their differences join together. But also, it's not just hey, let's pick three random notes. That doesn't work either. And so there's a, well, it says what is it? By mutual ordering. That is, each fits together in its place. Each is doing the role that they were put there for, and like I said, creating a bigger picture altogether.
What's interesting is my sister was a member of the school choir for a long time, and she was telling me about a thing that you can do, and they actually managed to pull it off a few times, where if you have all of your sections singing perfectly their various notes and chords, they're all on their perfectly on their various notes. What you'll get when the chord is struck, when they all reach the same chord, is that you'll actually have a phantom note that arises that nobody is singing, but it all comes together to also create this extra note. And it is super awesome. Like, it is, no, like, your brain goes, wait, that can't happen. They don't have enough different parts. Where did that come from? No one actually did that. But it's that whole same idea that, not only can you produce something moving and powerful like a chord, but sometimes you can even elevate a level higher than that and just create a second order effect that is completely mind-boggling. I mean, it's like Babel without the language confusion and, a lot more success and lack of divine intervention. But I always thought that was so awesome that, one singer, no matter how good, no matter how much of a virtuoso you might be, can't do that. But you get enough sort of reasonably talented people together, and all of a sudden you can create this ghostly, haunting amazement just by doing your thing properly. And so I found that really cool. And I have more to say, but I don't want to just sit here and monologue for the next 10 minutes. So I want to take a break.
Well, I mean, for one thing, like I said, this wasn't one of my favorites of this series. So I kind of feel like I've said most of what I have on this one. Elaina, how about you?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it. I think it, the metaphor of the music and kind of finding your place within the song and connection to others is really beautiful and lovely. So, yep, that was it.
Okay, Nate, how about you? Any?
I can understand for folks where this can all be a little scary. Because the way we're talking about it, it sounds like you just go away. Like you don't exist as an entity anymore. You are part of, the Gestalt. You are one of the phalanx now. You're a grain of sand in this beautiful beach, but no one will ever see you for yourself again. That's not true.
Well,
Ultimately,
that actually,
even in the most unified things, in teams that are struggling all for the same goal, like the rowboats or orchestra or anything, there are always those moments, like I said, where there is one who is really, really shining. And it comes and goes. It's not always the same person. While everyone is harmonizing, somebody steps out to be the melody. And sometimes that'll be you. You get to be the melody. You get to be the one who dances alongside while everyone else is sort of, pushing together, doing the one thing. And you get to do something a little different and just a little more for a minute. And that's okay. That's where, maybe that's where Elena's been at for a little while. Is, she's out there playing melody, right? Maybe that's where you're at. There, you were. Well, we're back here pushing the harmony. You're out there kind of on your own, making your own notes for a little while, but you will rejoin the harmony. Because in the end, we all come back together. And that's a healthy thing, is to break off, do your own thing a little while, come back in. And so don't think that we're advocating some kind of faceless collective here. In the end,
resistance is futile.
Shh, don't ruin the surprise, Sean. But in the end, it's, like I said, it's not about losing who you are. It's about adding adding the good of who you are to the good of others. And so don't be afraid, to be plugged in like that. Don't think that, the change is going to erase me. It won't. So you still get to be you, but you can be more than you. So, don't hear the music set. Sing find yourself a nice little chorus and sing along.
That actually reminds me a little bit of I just finished a week or so ago rereading C.S. Lewis's book Perelandra. I don't know if either of you have read that.
I haven't read it, but I listened to the audiobook.
Actually, yeah, this last time I listened to the audiobook. Because various things I do, audiobooks are pretty convenient sometimes. And I actually it reminds me of kind of the conclusion of that, because there's this, like, one of the final chapters, there's this kind of ecstatic chorus, which the word's been abused, not just like really happy, but like taken outside of time, taken to some kind of, almost trance state. But there's this chorus that where they're kind of celebrating the nature of creation, and they say, like, every the tiniest pebble on a beach, in the corner of the world, the entire world can say to itself, the entire world was made for me, and let no one say it's wrong. At the same time, that tiniest pebble is also made, for is made for everything else. And like the way God has made the world, it's not like there's this person who's important, and there's this one who is just kind of there. Like, every person has their role, and like every person is a part of his creation on purpose, and like we all fit together in part of some much bigger thing. And it's not in the sense of losing who we are, it's in the sense of taking part in this great dance. And I am absolutely mauling this, and if you haven't, you need to go read the book yourself, because it's
also read That Hideous Strength, which he talked about earlier, which is the third book in the same series and super fascinating, because
also kind of
I was made for the world and the world was made for me is an interesting take, because there's kind of a fat, stupid bear who becomes super important in the book. Mr.
This
Walt
bear will save England, or something like that. Yes.
And by extension, the world.
But anyway, yeah, and That Hideous Strength is also noticeably darker. It's the third in a trilogy, and it's also noticeably darker than Perelandra, a slightly grimmer kind of book. But anyway, yeah. And like C.S. Lewis is saying, like Nate was saying, and like Shakespeare is saying, there is, when we don't try and be, when we don't try and either be alone, be alone, be cut off, and we also don't try to kind of make everything about ourselves. When we don't try to take over the show, and, well, I'm just the one violinist, but forget the rest of you. This is going to be forget the rest of the orchestra. This is going to be my thing. Well, you're kind of going to ruin the concert, aren't you? You're kind of going to ruin the symphony if you try to do that. When we neither cut ourselves off from everyone else, nor try to make ourselves the center, when we take part with everyone, in the chorus God has made, there's something much greater than any one of us that comes out of that. So, whew. So, although I said this wasn't my favorite, apparently I got more out of it than I had suspected. One last time, Elaina, any last thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me, and good night, and God be with you.
Bye.